I'm so blessed to be able to do what I do and see so many miracles take place, from seeing people transform, the before and after, just from one single session of breathwork is absolutely incredible. And so there's a lot of different various types of breathwork that I do for people, and it kind of just depends on what they're facing and what they're going through. And a lot of the breathworks that I do is for liberating trauma, liberating pain, all those types of emotions. And then there's breathworks to get to that state of peace and bliss that I've talked about in other videos. And so those are the kind of the two main categories. And there's a lot of things that fall underneath those two categories. But specifically, I did a session today for a client that I'd seen 2 years prior, and she just had an incredible breakthrough the last time I saw her 2 years ago. I'm going to repost that testimony video. I have it on my Instagram, but I've never put it on YouTube, so I'll put it up here. And but long story short, she didn't know that she was still grieving from her father that had died 3 years prior. And during the experience, she just had this re-encounter with her father during the breathwork session. And he told her, everything's okay, you don't have to worry about me, and he embraced. And she just cried and cried and cried and cried. And that was the first session that I had with her a couple of years ago. And so today I just did another session, and it was absolutely incredible today. And so specifically today, during the session, she was crying and crying and crying and crying, and she just started like coughing, just this non-stop coughing. And it's interesting because people, they won't be any type of sick, have any type of cold, any type of cough. And during the experience, sometimes they'll cough. And this specific experience, it can be a lot of different reasons why somebody will cough during the experience. But this specific experience, she recounted and relived the experience when she was born. She had a very traumatic birth. And so in that traumatic birth, she couldn't breathe when she was born. And so the doctors really had to work on getting her to breathe, because she came out not being able to breathe as she was born. And so she relived that experience that she didn't even realize she was carrying it as a weight emotionally in her body. And so during the experience, she started coughing and coughing and coughing and crying. And she was recounting the story as she was birthed. And it was just this incredible story. And just the amount of emotions that was pouring through her as she was telling me this experience. And it was so amazing to hear. And so she was just in tears just telling me the story. She's like, Austin, I had this trauma at birth, and her mom had told her about it, but she never really thought anything from it. She thought she was like good. And so a lot of times we carry repressed traumas, repressed emotions, repressed feelings that we're not even aware of. And so just like that original story that I talked about, the first experience with her, and she had her father come to her, and she let go of that grief and that guilt that she was carrying from when her father had passed 3 years prior. She didn't know that she was still grieving from losing her father 3 years prior. She thought she was fully healed. And so that was starting to manifest before as problems with the chest, pain in the chest, which correlates to heartbreak. So it's really interesting how these different things will appear, because a lot of times we have these pains in the body and we don't know where they come from because they're not with us all the time. And so that's something that's key to an emotional type of pain, because when you have an emotional type of pain, it comes and goes. And so there's certain things that trigger this pain unconsciously, that triggers the nervous system, that causes you to feel this pain. And so a lot of times it's hard to decipher what's actually causing this pain, because if we're not really connected to ourselves and able to tune into our body and able to key what it's telling us, those pains will continue on. And the same thing for emotions, because pain is literally just emotions that have been built up in the body over time. And that's all that pain is. Yes, you can have some physical experiences where you have an accident and then somebody hits you and you feel pain from that. Yeah, exactly. But usually, most of the pains that we experience as humans in this experience that we're living in our daily lives, we experience emotional pains. And so when we go through those, a lot of us, we don't really know how to deal with it, because, we've never really learned how to, because it's not something that's taught in our society. Growing up in the United States specifically, we never taught how to meditate, connect with our body, all of that, because it was taught to us as something that was, woo-woo, as they say. And so it's more so on the logical mind. But the thing is, the logical mind can only take us so far. And so if we get stuck in the logical minds, a lot of these pains, traumas, emotions, we can't release. And so that's a very common thing that I see. And this is for people that are very analytical and they use their mind a lot. And when that happens, it's just hard for them to escape the mind, as I talked in a video prior. And that was a good video about how to escape the mind. Not necessarily escape it, but a lot of times we feel trapped in the mind if we are continuously overthinking, and if the mind is using us and we're not using the mind, because the mind is a tool. But anyway, in our daily lives, we experience these pains, and for a lot of us, they just come and go. And so for her, she had those different pains that would just come and go, specifically in her chest. And, it manifests as, tightness in the muscles, aching. Also has to deal with the lungs as well. Those are coupled together, as well as the heart, because dealing with the death of a parent, that deals with loss and grief. And so that's something that's hard to deal with, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with that. And so the key of it is so that we can tune into our body and figure out what we really need. Because the trick of all this is if we're truly tuned into ourselves, we don't need any sort of book, we don't need any sort of teacher, we don't need anything. And so if you've never connected to yourself for the first time, it's a difficult journey. And so the first step to really connect to yourself is meditating. And so highly recommend to anybody that's going through any sort of problem, emotional or physical, they just start to meditate in the morning for at least 5 minutes right after they wake up. And that's key to getting started, to starting to connect to yourself. But if you need help going deeper or releasing any sort of specific pain or trauma, reach out to me. I can help you.